it's Lori here. I'm here today to do part one of my reading wrap up for the month of April. April was the first month that I was in quarantine for the whole month. I worked from home the entire time. I had a spring break, which means I got a lot of reading done that week. It was the reading rush, stay at home readathon. So I actually did get a lot of reading done and a lot of listening done. I think the first couple of weeks of quarantine, I was really struggling with finding background stuff to listen to. So I think I got a better system in the month of April, and that's why I wound up listening to a lot of books. And we had some gorgeous weather days, and I got to go for a lot of bike rides and a lot of walks. So it was actually a pretty good reading month. Still trying to stay safe is always key, but I do feel like I was able to get a bunch of reading done. So I'm going to talk through the first 9 books that I read, and then the end of the month you'll see the rest of the books that I read. Right now I read, at the time of this filming, which is April 25th, which is a Saturday, I have read 14 books, which is pretty amazing. Right now I think I've read about 60 books for the year, which is also pretty good. But enough about the stats. Let's get into it. The first book that I wound up finishing in the month of April was Super Jason by Crystal Cicere. This book did come out in March. I was able to get this book when I went to ALA, which at the time of this recording, it might be the only book convention I go to this year, so I'm really happy that I went to that book convention. Also, a lot of the books I did get at ALA their due dates have been pushed, a lot of them, so I might be talking about books and they might be coming out in the future, and I just apologize, but they're the only books I have right now to read, so I'm just going to focus on the books that I got from ALA. But this is from the same author that wrote the Windy City Magic series, which I love. I still need to read the last book in that series. But this book is kind of like not similar, but it basically follows superheroes, and you follow 2 characters, Claire and Brigitte, and they are on opposite ends of this superhero world. Claire is determined to be involved in the superhero world. She at the start of this book, she winds up getting like an apprenticeship to be a part of this. And then you have Brigitte, who has been dating a superhero and is so over that life, and their paths wind up crossing in some unexpected ways. And it's an LGBTQ romance. I really, really love the characters. I thought it was super cute and super fun. I said this in my reading vlog. Don't read the summary of this if you don't want to be spoiled for a plot point that happens way into the book. But I really, really loved it. I like the world. I thought the representation of LGBTQ was super fun. I think I liked Brigitte's point of view a little bit more. She's the one that was like kind of over the superhero lifestyle. But I was a big fan of the LGBTQ romance as well. So I wound up giving this book 4 stars, and I actually wound up buddy reading this with my friend Jen, and we actually had a lot of fun talking about it. So this was the first book that I finished reading in the month of April, and I am really hopeful that we'll get more books from this author, maybe even set in this world, but I definitely have to dive back in and complete that series for her. But overall, I wound up really, really liking this book. I wound up giving it 4 stars. The next book that I wound up reading was kind of a surprise, and it was The Secret Runners from Matthew Reilly. This is a young adult thriller, I would say that, but also very much like an action movie. So basically, you follow these 2 characters named Sky and Red, and they wind up moving to New York City. It's like their parents got divorced, and they wind up moving to New York City, and they wind up getting invested in like this society, and the society involves time traveling basically. And when in their current timeline, there's a prediction of like a world-ending event. I know I read this at like the most weirdest time. It's kind of them trying to figure out what is the effect of that. So it's a little bit science fictiony, but I liked it. I wouldn't say it's my favorite. I said that this book really reads to me more like a thrill, like an action movie. I didn't feel super connected to the characters, but I love New York as a setting, and as someone who works in New York City but has been unable to go to New York City for the past like month and a half, it was nice to be back in New York City. I will admit it does have a world-ending element, so if that is not in your wheelhouse when it comes out in August, maybe don't read it quite yet. But I wound up liking it. I didn't love it. I wish I felt a little bit more connected to the characters. I did like the world building that they did about the time travel. So I wound up giving this book 3 stars, and as of right now, this book does come out in August. So if you're interested, keep that on your agenda, and my review will be posted closer to that date. And then the next book that I wound up reading goes along with the Time Warp YA Book Club book. I wound up picking up Scarlet by Marissa Meyer, but we're actually, for the book club, we're actually reading this book next month. But I wound up reading it a little bit early. For those that don't know, this is the second book in the Lumiere Chronicle series by Marissa Meyer. The first book was like a Cinderella retelling, and this book is follows, it's like a Little Red Riding Hood retelling. The one thing I loved about this world, like about this series, was that every book kind of built on the other one, and even though each character has their own book that is specifically focused on them, you still see all the characters. I will say that this book is like my least favorite book in the series out of like all of them. But I did forget how much like Cinder and the other characters had a role in this book. And I did like it a little bit more than the first time that I read it. But I'm definitely more invested in Cress and Cinder's story, and we haven't even really met Cress yet. She's the next book. But I wound up liking it. I'm really happy that I reread it. I thought that it was a really interesting reread. I love that we got to meet, like, we got more of Thorn and Cinder in this book. It was so fun, and I'm definitely going to hope to read Cress this month. If not this month, then definitely next month. But Cress is definitely my favorite book in this series, and I'm just waiting because I know that I'm going to want to own that audiobook, and I'm just waiting to see, like, what I have to spend my credits on. But really wound up liking my reread, and hopefully I get to read Cress soon. The next book that I wanted picking up was actually my mom's choice. She wound up choosing for me Aru Shah and the End of Time by Rani Chasky. This is the first book in her. This was the first ever book published in the Rick Riordan Presents series, and I actually wound up starting this last year, and then I never wound up finishing it. So I wound up picking up a copy of this at my school's book fair that they have every single year. I don't think we're gonna have it this year, but I wound up picking up this last year, and I actually wound up enjoying it. It basically follows this girl named Aru Shah, and she's a girl that is obsessed with lying. She always is like making her world better, or like making her life seem more intricate or like more exciting. One day she gets caught in a lie, and it kind of sends her, and to get out of the lie, she has to do something that kind of awakens these gods. And she kind of winds up meeting up with another character named Minnie, who I love Minnie, and a little bird, and they wind up going on an adventure to basically save the world from ending and to stop time from basically ending. I thought this was so fun. I really love that it had two strong female characters. I love that it focused on, I think this one was Hindu mythology, I think. I feel like this one was Hindu mythology, but I could. Yeah, this one was Hindu mythology, which I know nothing about. I know that this is like a 3-book series, and I really do want to get book 2. I thought that the end was super surprising. I really wound up liking it, and I wound up giving it 3.5 stars for review, and we'll definitely be checking out the audiobooks in this series. I actually might try to see that, like get that for some listening, because I actually wound up I physically read this one, but I did start listening to it, and I did like it, but then I just got distracted. But well, overall, wound up enjoying it, and I wound up giving it 3 stars, and I would definitely continue reading the series in the future. The next book we're going to chat about is Tales of Beetle and the Bard by J.K. Rowling. I'm so excited to finally talk about this book, because for those that don't know, I've been in the middle of a Harry Potter reread, and like literally the last day of 2019, I wound up finishing the Harry Potter canon, and now I'm slowly going through the side books. But I was waiting for this audiobook to pop, because it was the only book that they had not made into an audiobook, and they really had some fun voice actors do it. They had a lot of people from the Harry Potter cast. They had Jude Law. So I was actually just waiting for that, and I wound up listening to it in like a day. I really liked all the stories, and I wound up keep going with my Alohomora reread, and now I just have to dive in and do Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which is going to be hopefully a book that I wind up reading in the month of May, because it's not like a long audiobook, but it's one that I have never read. So and also Quidditch Through the Ages are 2 books that I've just never read myself, so that will be a nice background noise when I'm doing some schoolwork. But I really like the stories. I forgot how short they all were. I think my favorite is probably the first book, the first story, and then also the Tale of the Three Brothers. I really like. So I actually really, really wound up liking this. And I know for a while it was free on Audible. Like if you pre-ordered it, it was free. But I would definitely recommend it, especially like if you want something super quick. I think it's like a 4-hour audiobook. But it was really, really fun. I wound up giving it 5 stars and excited to hopefully complete the reread of the Harry Potter canon. Hopefully by the end of 2020. Hopefully that's my goal. But yeah, well, wound up really liking it, and I would definitely recommend you check out the new audiobook that Audible came out with because I actually wound up really liking it. The next book I'm going to chat through is one of my first 5-star reads of the month, and that is Sisters of Sword and Song by Rebecca Ross. This is the same author that wrote The Queen's Rising, which I haven't read yet, but I still do have it. I actually got an arc a couple of years ago at New York City Comic Con. But this book was one that took me totally by surprise. It's an ancient Greek inspired fantasy novel following two sisters, Evadine and Halicent, and that you get both their perspectives. And basically, the book starts off with Halicent coming home or trying to come home after being away. She's basically been training to be a warrior, and something happens, and it kind of sends her off on the run for something that she's kind of running from. And then you have Everdeen, who is the younger sister, who is kind of dealing with the aftermath of all that. And I love this book. I love how this book focused on sisters. I love the world building. I love how this book did like magic system was super super interesting, and I loved the romance for both the characters. Really really wound up liking it. I thought it was so well done. It's also a standalone, and I know that standalone books are so hard to find in this day and age. I thought this was such a solid book. Really, really clear storytelling. Love the world building. Love the characters. Love the focus on sisterhood. This book does come out right now. I think it still comes out in June, so you can get it hopefully in June. Hopefully it doesn't get pushed back at all. But I wound up loving this book, and I will totally go back and read more by this author and read more in the future. But a standalone, if you're looking for a good standalone this year, I would definitely check up Sisters of Sword and Song. And if you really like books that have focus on a strong sisterhood dynamics, again, really wound up liking this book. And I've never read a book with like an ancient Greek inspired world building, and this was one that just really, really surprised me. And this cover is so pretty as well. So I definitely think you guys should add it to your TBRs this June. And then the next book that I wound up reading was one that I was a little bit hesitant going into, and that is Lucky Caller by Emma Mills. Now, I have loved most of Emma Mills' books that she wrote. I have loved Where the Adventure Ends. I love Foolish Hearts. I struggled a lot with Famous in a Small Town, but I wound up picking this book up mostly because I had it from the library, and right now all my libraries are closed, so I just have these books indefinitely. And I wound up liking this one a lot. But it basically follows this character named Nina, and she's going through a lot of changes in her life, like a lot of changes, like um, her mom's getting remarried, and kind of she's dealing with a lot of like friendship drama, and she winds up getting sucked into this radio, like this podcasting class, and she winds up getting into a group with like people she doesn't really know, and they wind up doing like a topic that they weren't really planning on, and it kind of takes on a life of its own, and they wind up becoming invested in these two like fandoms that wind up causing a lot of drama for their show. But I loved it. I thought that it really focused on friendship in fun way, fandom in fun way. I thought that this book was so tightly wound, and that's what I love about Emma Mills' writing. Everything always comes together so well, and all her stories and plots make sense. I struggled with that in Famous in a Small Town, but this book, this is what I want Famous. This is what I wanted Famous in a Small Town to be. It was a little bit similar, had some similar elements, but still super enjoyable. And I really love the message that they like the way that they discuss friendship in this book, like at the end of high school. And I've never read a book like that really talked about friendship like that honestly. So I really, really wound up liking it. I wound up giving it 4 stars, and I really can't wait to see what Emma Mills writes next. I still have to read First and Then. I will add that to my TBR at some point. But this book was one that really was like a nice, pleasant surprise. And definitely, it actually might be my second favorite Emma Mills book, right behind Foolish Hearts. So, a very, very strong read, and one that I would recommend. If you wanted a little bit more out of Famous in a Small Town, this might be a good book for you because it really did focus on friendship dynamics, and a lot of the elements did tie together at the end. So, and then the next book that I'm going to chat about is another book that I have kept, that my library has just have on hold for an indefinite amount of time, is Voyage of the Frost Heart by Jamie Leiter. And this was like another middle grade read. This was also a former Owl Crate Junior pick. And it also has beautiful illustrations. But it basically follows this young boy named Ash, and he is revealed to have something called song weaving magic, which is something that you do not want to have. And he's basically cast out of his society because he can't be a song weaver because everyone's terrified of him. And he winds up going on an adventure with a group of people to kind of like figure out about his song magic. And it's kind of like a thing about found family. And I love the world building in this. And I thought that some of the elements in this book were like a little bit predictable, but it was so fun. And I would definitely give this book like maybe like 3.75 stars. I would definitely read more. I thought that it really read more in this series in the future. I thought it tackled like diversity and racism and prejudices in such a fun way. I loved all the different type of characters, and I just really liked it. I've never read a book in such like an Arctic setting before, so that was like a cool environment as well. And yeah, so I wound up giving this 3.75 stars. And if you are like series like Keeper of the Lost Cities, or you like series like Percy Jackson, I think that this might be a fun read for you as well. And then the last book I'm going to talk about in this video is this is the first book that I read for the Reading Rush Readathon. I'll talk about the other one in my next vlog, but the one I'm going to talk about is The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I have struggled with Christina Lauren's books. I have read 2 previous books by them. I read Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating and Roomies, and I did like them, but I didn't love them. I really struggled with the ending. This book, however, I wound up really liking all the way through. So basically follows this girl named Olive, and she is the maid of honor at her twin sister's wedding. And her twin sister, Amy, is like a very good at winning contests and getting everything for free. So she basically got her whole wedding and her whole honeymoon for free. Unfortunately, the wedding buffet wound up poisoning all her guests and her husband. And someone has to go on the honeymoon because it's free. And she has to be able to go because that would be like fraud. So because they're identical twins, she winds up going with her husband's like brother, and they are like mortal enemies. They don't like each other at all. And it was just such a fun read. I love the tropical setting. I love the love to hate romance. The book was structured a lot differently than I thought it was going to be structured, and there was some elements that were added that just were like really surprising to me. But I wound up really liking it, and I wound up giving this book like 4 stars. I actually wound up picking up their other book this month as well. So yeah, this one was really fun. Probably my favorite Christina Lauren book to date. So those are all the books I'm going to talk about in this video. Make sure you check out my video later in the week where I talk about the other books that I wound up reading in the month of April. Out of all of these books, I would say my 2 favorites are probably Lucky Caller and Sisters of Sword and Song, with Super Adjacent being an honorable mention because I really wound up liking that book. And my favorite audiobook was definitely Scarlet. So I will talk to you guys for my other wrap-up in a couple of days, and I hope you guys are staying safe and being well. Bye, guys.